Welcome to another episode of our Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. In this episode, I talk to Sean. Sean is a remarkable entrepreneur with a story that's truly inspirational. Her journey began at 17, leading her from the fitness industry to mastering into neuro-linguistic programming and headhunting for traders. Over 20 years, she's been at the forefront of the startup world, mentoring, coaching, and consulting. And today, she is a leading entrepreneur coach, mentor, and a consultant focusing on personal and business growth, a theme that has defined her incredible career. So I hope you enjoyed. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ash. How can I live up to that? But thank you.
Great stuff, great stuff. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, I mean there are loads out there, some classics, right? Mine comes from, I believe, it's a Japanese proverb, which is "fall down 7 times and get up 8," which I will say in English, obviously, which very much for me inspires me continuously. So I think if you can do that, you're good, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I'm inspired by a lot of Japanese quote myself too. So, you know, I get that. Great. So I'm eager to learn more about the person. As a person yourself, can you take us back to your roots? Share with our listeners about your upbringing, childhood. How did your early experience shape your journey to eventually lead to your becoming a visionary entrepreneur and coach yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I suppose the journey kicked off when I left home in my late teens, and so very much found myself grafting and getting on with stuff from an early age, really, which I have to say I don't think did me any harm when you reflect on what you learn from that, right? So yeah, I left home pretty damn early, and I remember my earliest days, having a very little bed sit in town and grafting and getting a little job that made teas and coffees while I was studying, finishing off my A levels. So from an early age, I've battled and kind of got on with stuff just to keep doing the things that I wanted to do. And yeah,
Mm,
I suppose if you fast forward a little bit from there through to kicking off in the fitness industry. Gosh, I mean, it's about 25 years ago, a fair old whack of time.
right.
And very much similar sort of vein, right? Wanting others to learn more about themselves and get fit and take action and move forward. So the fitness industry was a pretty logical place for me to kick
Mm,
off. And yeah, I studied anatomy and physiology and ended up being really quite successful in the city. I trained a lot of the traders, Lehman Brothers when they were still standing, and UBS and the others in that area. And yeah, very much, really enjoyed working with them. It's great working with people who are very driven and want to do a great job of what they're doing. So yeah, I did that for about 5 years, and again,
mhm,
it's that same vein of wanting other people to be a success, or that kind of thing there. And then I suppose from there, which you mentioned at the beginning, the NLP piece. So
mm,
these guys and men and women and other, and really enjoying that space. But it was interesting to me that people that I considered pretty damn intelligent weren't always setting out or achieving the things that they want to do. Someone would come to me, I want to get really fit, and then they're not doing it. I'm like, hey, what's
mm,
going on? So I started to think about, what's the best way to get people to achieve success? What are some of the things there? And apart from obviously taking the action needed, which I'd
mm,
figured out by that point, is also very much around the kind of mindset that you approach things, really. And someone told me about NLP, which you mentioned,
mm,
neuro-linguistic programming, that art and science of communication, and really understanding where your peak performance comes from. What's that mindset that you can tap into that'll help you get shit done?
yeah.
So I studied that for a bit and then applied that to the coaching, which was just a great move. It really made a massive difference to enabling others to achieve what they set out to do, and hearing what people weren't saying, right? Which I
Mm,
find has also carried through to today. And the coaching and mentoring stuff that I do there. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant, and worked with some great people in that space. And yes, that was kind of the fitness and the mindset piece very much at the beginning, which I've carried through with me.
Nice. That's brilliant. And would you be able to tell us about like what kind of challenges nowadays these entrepreneurs, founders who come to you for help, what sort of challenges you see, or what sort of patterns you see in these challenges, which is normally coming over the surfaces right now compared to 10 years back? Because you've been in industry for so long, you have so much insights and data, live data, I must say. So what's the difference between 10 years, before 10 years and now, and the challenges for the founders?
Well, I mean, I think there's two things there. There's the actual building a business, and then there's the founder, the mindset themselves. And I think, don't need to explain to anyone that it's substantially changed the opportunity to grow business. Opportunities, I'd like to think it's more of an even playing field now. I think we've still got work to do, but there's definitely that. I also think that technology has definitely moved forward since, gosh, however
Indeed.
many years ago, right?
Indeed.
And we're on this wonderful wave of this AI, blah, blah, blah stuff that's going on out there. So I think that in terms of the opportunities, there's more opportunities now than ever, and opportunities to do cool stuff, to build
Mm,
businesses than they were before. I think, although, previously maybe there was more trailblazing opportunities to go on, since things hadn't really kicked off at that point. So I
mm,
think there's a huge change, and there will always be change in the space, right? What we're able to do and what's possible, ideally.
mm,
But I think the challenges that founders face, regardless of what that opportunity looks like from then to now, are pretty much the same. I think it's a lot to do with mindset, and how you see yourself, your capabilities, your actual capabilities, and then how you see yourself. I
mm,
think is to say is it can be merged. I think the other thing is a lot of founders have high expectations for themselves and delivering what they're setting out to do, and a lot of it can be simple as, and a big one that I've come across all the time is, I have
mm.
no idea what to do next. I have got so much on, what the hell am I going to do with my time, and what do I need to do next? What's the next smart move, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think, there's a fundamental across the board, and will never change, in terms of the mindset piece. And
Mm.
how we see what we've got in front of us and how we perform, I think is a common piece across the board.
Right. Okay. Okay. So when you had this epiphany, or I must say, then when you decided to start helping the entrepreneurs and founder, and I must say that there must be a lot of people, or a lot of coaches or consultants you must have researched in the market who were doing this before. Were there any other coaches or mentors who inspired you, or you thought that that the strategies or the way they're helping other people is something which you can also implement into your process, or what your perspective was totally different, and
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I suppose rather than sort of a big sort of epiphany of like, wow, that's changed, that viewpoint's changed how I'm showing up and how I see, how I deliver things. I'm
Mm,
incredibly inspired by all the brilliant people out there who are helping and lifting up others. I think there are so many. You can't bring them all to the table. But what I can say, that rather than one particular moment or person, I suppose it's along the way, people that I've seen grafting in the companies that I worked with, the real founders on the floor, in terms of some of the employed roles I was in, for example, in my employed role career, being one of the first few people into startups. It was the people on the ground making things happen. It was the people breaking through problems and barriers when when they were stuck, and continuing grafting forwards to help that business become a success. So individual little bits that inspired me along the way, that I've picked up. I think, there's a survival technique you develop when you leave home at an early age, which is looking at others and learning what they do really well. And it
mm,
might be the fact that, just the small things they do, I've just noticed, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And then I'll put it into my toolkit and pick that up. An example may be, for example, I work with this entrepreneur in Notting Hill, a really great chap, actually a business consultant. And
mhm,
one of the things that I was quite inspired by this chap was how just focused and simple his day was, and yet he had so much on. So I
mm,
took a moment and and reflected on how he actually did that. And what I noticed was each morning he would dash through his emails, dash through whatever else it was, and he would get out a post-it note and put down five things on it, 5 bullet points, and that would be his focus for the day. And I
Perfect.
thought, you know what? That's really good. I like
Mm,
that. I want to do that. So I
yeah.
took that and implemented that. And I've actually shared that not only like a couple of weeks ago with someone who was like, I'm doing loads of stuff. I'm not getting much done. I'm like, do less, do it better. So there are
Mm,
these things that I've picked up along the way. I think even down to the fact that I remember working at another company, and this just the way this woman showed up. She walked into the office. She stood tall. She sat down. She was as calm as what's it in a situation that was quite lively. She calmly
mm,
got out her iPad and put it onto the table, and this, it was all very techy. And I thought, I like that. I like the calmness. I like the fact that she's slick as what's it, got out her
mm.
iPad, looked cool. So I think it was not long ago, not far from that, and I was like, iPad tick.
Yeah, yeah.
Conscious, coolness, tick. So I think for me, it was along the way, the people that I picked up, and I think, as I said, going back to point about surviving, I think one of the great things that we can do is just learn from others. There's a lot of people on pedestals, but there's a lot
Mm.
of learning we can have from day to day.
Indeed, indeed. So, Sean, will you be able to take us through a case study or potentially a hypothetical scenario where a founder or an entrepreneur comes to you for help, for coaching, for improving either his productivity or scale his business or something like that? And then, how do you help him or her out in the whole journey, and then how the whole process works?
Oh, like as in how I work with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool question. So, I mean, it's kind of a similar flow with all that I do. So, for example, I work with businesses and help them grow. I consult businesses and help them scale up. So that's next level growth stuff. And then there I have individual founders, either in a coaching capacity or mentoring capacity, who come to me who go, I just want you to fix stuff and I just want to get better at it. So I
Mm,
suppose the congruence with the flow throughout all of those is just taking a moment and putting everything out on the table.
mm.
Where the hell are you? Where the hell is the business? Whatever it is, all right? And sitting down and putting that down so you can see that really clearly. So I think at the start of working with anyone, it's seeing where things are, where is the business, where does it need to get to, what are you doing that's working, what's not, and what are the key factors for success that are missing that we need to take a look at in order to move something forward. So, for example, I worked through Deloitte with a last mile delivery service company.
Mm,
And one of the pieces there, so we kicked off in the same format, right?
mm,
It's fairly established business, a team of about 25, and sitting down and working out where they were and where they wanted to get to. And I believe that they wanted to be able to scale to take on a bigger last mile food product provider,
mm,
sort of supermarket. And at the time, they had built their business for a number of years around much smaller startups and different types of businesses. As with anything, you then build your structures around serving the needs of those clients or suppliers, but maybe they're built up and it's not really connecting you with where you want to get to next, that bigger opportunity, that scaling up. So,
mm,
putting cards on the table, going, where are you now? What structures are in place? Operationally, or what programs tech wise. And I do believe there were many, many layers that have been built up to cater for that. And yet no time to tidy that up. I think it's a classic, right? That can be
yeah.
the case in a business or also in our own lives. We kind of stack shit on top of each other to get it done. And then we realize we're overloaded, but it might just be how we're approaching stuff.
Mm,
So, going back to my example, in this case, it was pulling apart, reviewing the tech, what's working for you, what's not
mhm,
connecting, and how are the team using it. Because you can have the best tech, right? But if the team
mm,
don't know what they're doing or how they're
yeah.
using it, then it doesn't really hit the mark. So
Mm,
very much, looking at where it is now, and then they're looking at the future and going, okay, so if this is, with this example company, if a plug and play version of what they want is where they're heading,
mm,
then how do they create that? So very much reducing the noise down, picking the best operational and technology workflow, and then understanding how the team going to utilize it and going to roll it out. And then also the final piece, which I think is relevant to the individual work that I do with people, is have they got the right team, and are they doing the right things at the right time to make that a success, and do they have the right mindset and attitude to get that done. So very much pulling things apart and then presenting the solutions. Here's
Mm,
what you need to do, and this is how you implement it. And I've worked with companies in the past where, and in this one, for example, is we've actually mapped out the tech stack that they've needed, actually mapped out the changes or the recruitment funnels and the different things they need to build. And sometimes a company will build it themselves, or I'll have my team do that. But ultimately, it's taking them from cards on the table to what do we need to do to make this a success, both business, operations, people, and then giving them the toolkit to know how to actually do that and implementing it and seeing it through. And then I think the final thing, and I think it's the same with any work that anyone should be is doing or should do, is giving them the toolkit to be able to continue to work
mm,
well. So it's one thing having someone there coaching or consulting or in your startup, but what happens when you leave, right?
mm,
And so I always make sure that people are left with the right support and toolkits to be able to continue that
mm.
individually or as a business.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so just so that I understand it, on a very high level, from a helicopter view,
Mm.
you make sure that all the information, the systems, the processes, and where currently the company or the business is, you make it visual to them. You make it see them
Yeah,
whatever they have.
yeah, bring
Yeah.
them clarity. I mean, a lot of people that I work with, they say I bring clarity and direction. I'll go, hey, this is everything. These are the
Yeah.
things you need to do, and this is how you're going
Mm,
to get there.
yeah.
And I think ultimately, if you look at anything we are choosing to do or set out to accomplish, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of the middle bit, right? What are we
Mm,
doing? What do we need to do? And it's difficult to see. If you're in the middle of a business, hats off to those that are grafting away in some of these scale ups. It's really hard to see. Because you're busy, and then also we have filters on how we perceive what we have in front of us, right?
mm.
So there's many layers. So it can be it can be fantastic to get someone in to have a look at that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And once they can see it all on the table, whichever way you make them see it,
Yeah.
then you enable them providing with the toolkits to enhance and scale to whatever level they want to reach
Yeah,
to, right?
yeah, and this is in context the same as someone not working with someone. It's like, where are
Mm,
you at, either individually or business? What do you need to do? Put everything
mm,
out in front of you. Make sure you can clearly see that, and then
mm,
figure out what needs to be done, and then find out how to do that. So that could be finding support from others, or going
mm,
online, or
mm.
learning more. And actually taking action to do it, and then supporting yourself so that there are long-term changes that you've implemented and you can stay on top of.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Great. And I want to talk more about, how from a business perspective, how bigger you have grown, etc. But before we move on to that step, I would like to take one step back and talk more
Mm.
about when you talked about, you got into this visionary entrepreneur spirit. Were there any key influences from your family or surrounding that played a significant role in shaping your entrepreneur spirit? We would love to hear more about the foundation that set you on this
Yeah.
incredible path.
I mean, I suppose it comes in a number of different forms. I mean, my father was a very successful stockbroker in the city, and would
Mm,
always was a grafter, right? I didn't have the fortune of knowing him that well because he worked so hard and was so
yeah.
busy. But what I did see was him flying back from sort of New York or China, Hong Kong, wherever it was, and in his suits and thinking, yeah, he's out there doing something pretty cool. And I remember
Mm,
thinking, yeah. And I, from my side, I'm aware that my family is pretty entrepreneurial. I mean, my brother's in tech. He's had a company for however
mm,
many years. So I think there's the environment that you're in, and then I think there's also your predisposition genetically.
mm,
Uh, I'm also naturally a very go-getty person, as I said, just kicking off and just getting up and going out and
yeah.
and and figuring out how to live life. You learn that you can I think you just learn that you can achieve anything you set out to do.
Mm,
Let's keep a realistic hat on that, but, ultimately, I learned not far off in my younger years that you can just go and do it. You can
indeed. Yeah.
just go and do it. I think there's a lot of hiding behind, "Oh my gosh," worrying about getting things done. Just do it. And then I
Yeah.
think the other bit is being brave. I think when I was younger, I was a lot of being thrown on stage and singing and dancing and playing the violin, which I really would, right? It's just like, thanks. But what I learned also was to be brave. So what I discovered was if you get up and do it, brave enough to stand there, and
Mm.
then the next time you do it, you feel cool, then actually that's the piece, right? So I think bravery was another one, which is why I often find myself in situations and then go, oh
Mm.
shit, okay, I'm in the middle of doing this thing. This is cool, but
Yeah,
I'm right
yeah,
in the
yeah.
middle of
Great stuff. Great stuff. Okay, great. So let's move towards the business side of it. Then, would you be able to share how give us a sense of how sense of the size of the business, where you are in terms of number of customers, size of team, etc.
it. Oh yeah, so I mean, I suppose I'm in a bit of a transition period. So with Co-Startup and Go, it's been going about 7 or 8 years. Has been fundamental in the growth of, 250, 300 startups, either from like a whether it's viable or not, through to
Mm,
growth.
mm,
Where we are now is a really interesting piece. So I suppose, within the last year, we've always averaged between 15 and 20 clients at any one time, with a team to support that at
mm,
various levels.
mm,
What's been interesting over the last year is that, really, particularly with all the changes, all the things that we all know that's gone on in the last couple of years, um, you know, and the tech piece, what we noticed was a change in where things are heading, and the resources and the opportunities for startup growth, and the amount that we'd already learned. So I suppose where we are now actually is a really interesting point is we've down tools on the services, one-to-one people services to growing startups, and are probably, I mean, a couple of months away now of
mhm,
relaunching from more of a membership subscription basis. Because what we figured out was actually, when you've been going for this long, you really wonder about where you're going to go next as a business, and particularly with the technology changes as ever.
mm,
So where we are at the moment is we are currently finishing off our platform, which is
mhm,
going to be able to help hundreds and thousands of more startups on an ongoing basis, sharing the learning. I mean, when you've
mm,
worked with that many companies, it's like you get some really great learning of how people build businesses and what makes a success. We've got
mm.
wonderful toolkits and subscription MVP builds that are possible, etc. So we're in an exciting piece. I'm glad you asked me, actually.
Sure, sure. And we would love to learn more because most of the listeners of our show is founders. They're new entrepreneurs doing the startups. And if you don't mind, would you be able to share the name of the platform or tell us
Yeah,
more
I mean,
about
this is Co-Startup and Go. Well, that's the company, and we've changed it to Co-Startup. Reason being, people were like, "What does and Go mean?" We were like, "Haven't got a clue, actually." So we conformed, which I don't normally do, and so it's called Co-Startup, which is still findable through all my social links, etc. And we
Uh-huh.
will be singing and dancing when that kicks off. And I suppose so. We're working behind the scenes on getting that hooked up. I'm very excited about that. And I suppose the other pieces that I'm working on. I mean, I coach, I've coached for very many years, so I'm always coaching between 10 and 15 people. So within the space, CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs, and doing some great stuff there. And I suppose I also do the consultancy pieces, so 3 to 4 of those at any one time.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the rest of where my time is spent is I do a lot of mentoring, which I think you mentioned as well. So
Yeah.
I support Foundervine and Barclays Back Founder Accelerator Program, which is the second year in a row. These guys, the guys, Foundervine guys, are just absolutely epic. Last year up until not so long ago, I was mentoring for the Peter Jones Foundation, Welsh Dragon Dudes. So very proud to
Mhm.
be connected with that, and a great chat through that.
You
So
have contacts in Dragon's Den?
yeah, yeah. So it was interesting because it was through. I'm a member of a private member club in town called Homegrown, which is a really great space, and
Uh-huh.
I think it was through them I saw the opportunity to give my time to the Peter Jones Foundation, and
Mhm.
as I constantly making sure that I'm lifting others up. I think when you've been on a journey like mine, you want to do that and you feel the pain. So let's get
Yeah.
that moving. So yeah,
Yeah.
really good, and I've worked with a great chap over this last period through that. So yeah, and so you can see my time is pretty rammed, basically. I'm also at the moment, I finished the first draft of a book I'm writing, which is sharing knowledge as well.
Really
Harder than I
good.
thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But good. And so yeah, so I suppose it's I'm taking a leaf out of my own advice to others, right, and
Mm.
prioritizing and focusing. taking action to move things forward really at the minute.
Mm. Great. And this is really good because you could share some tips or some habits for our founders. So typically our accelerator programs, and you've been involved in multiple accelerator
Oh yeah,
programs, you know that.
that's
Yeah.
so
Yeah, so it's like once you have once you get into the startup space, you're always working.
yeah,
You don't care about your health, or even uh, that instant up to that you start ignoring the family also, and
yeah,
that's bad,
balance.
really, really bad. So would you be able to show some light to our listeners, saying what sort of habits or what sort of maybe morning rituals they should follow have things in a streamlined manner for their lifestyle,
Yeah. I mean,
style.
it's an interesting one because what is balance, right? If you're
Mm,
really driven and there's a gap to do something, you'll put something in there, and it may have
mm,
to go with an opportunity that isn't completely in line with where you're at in your life. But and look, everyone does things differently in terms of how they manage their time. I suppose my a big piece of advice is understanding. It's not necessarily I'm going to give one size fits all, right? Um, but it's understanding how you perform at your best. So when is the best time of day for you to be your most productive? So you hear these people who get up like, hey, I get up at 4 a.m. and then I go to the gym and then I
mm.
do all this. Good for you. If that
Yeah,
works for you, fab, right? That's your space before the kids get up or whatever it is. Make the most of that time when you're most focused. Or if it's evenings, then it's evenings, right? So I
yeah.
suppose the first piece around any type of routine for anyone's success is knowing how to work with yourself rather than
Mm,
against yourself. The times when you're trying to do a task and you don't want to play, you're like, I
mm,
really don't want to do this. You need to ask yourself, are you working with yourself or against yourself, right? So
mm,
first piece is morning or evening or most productive times. And then I think the other one is making sure that you're enjoying what you're doing. Because if we
mm.
don't and it's too full on all the time, we throw our toys out of the pram. It's classic.
Indeed.
If
Yeah,
you just keep doing stuff all day, 24/7, and you stack your day, you stack your evening, of course you're gonna not want to do it and then have a period of time where you're not delivering. So you're
yeah.
actually not on your team. I call it being on your team. Be on
Mm,
your team, right? If you're not
mm.
on your team, we do this stupid dance and hats off everyone. Everyone does it right. I'm gonna do
Yeah,
that. No, I'm not. I'm gonna do that. Yes, I am. I'll do it later. And then you end up doing the next day, last minute before the meeting. You're like, could have cracked that out in 5 minutes before the catch up. Why the hell did I do that? So
yeah.
while we laugh, they could be quite frustrating in the week if we have quite a few of them. So I
Mm,
suppose my advice would be I invite you to look at how you're working with yourself in the week and build a framework, whether it's like 45 minutes, an hour work, half an
mm,
hour break. If you did that throughout the day, you still get more
mm,
done. Or going back to my piece around that dude's 5 things a day, pick
mm,
5 things, do five
mm.
things, end those 5 things going brilliant, and then you end up doing more rather
Mm.
than that never ending list, right?
Yeah,
Never
yeah,
ending list of stuff, which is just overwhelming. And then you get less done because you're just looking at going, I don't even know which one to do.
right.
So there's loads of fundamentals around it. I suppose my other piece of advice is get a toolkit together that supports you specifically to get things done. I mean, there's lots of different ways of working, and some people are neurodiverse, some others, some aren't. Whatever that is. I mean, I myself am dyslexic, so I keep myself quite regimented with where I put things. But have your toolkit that helps you get things done. So my one, for example, is my diary. And
Mm,
when he looks at it, it looks like a really bad game of Tetris. It's when I'm moving, so it's like multicolored boxes. But for me, I have these boxes, it blocks out different times. I know exactly what I'm doing that day. It's linked to my strategy, both business and personal. And I keep that. And that's the thing that I will not do. And then the rest I can move around and be flexible with. So I suppose it's what supports you to manage your time well. What tools is it, that help you do that? And then I suppose the other one is, going back to the point of what you were saying, the balance.
mm,
Just be kind to yourself. We literally, this is it. This is, you have one life, you've got to live it, enjoy it. You're much better off being kind to yourself and then
mm.
rocking up in your day and doing a flipping good job and then turning around to your family and enjoying that time than you
Definitely.
are hammering it out, burning out. We all get to burn out at different points because it's, we're human. We just, but enjoy what you're doing, because I think it's really important. And I suppose my last piece on that, 'cause using that word reminded me of it, is if you find yourself in the space where you do feel overloaded and you aren't getting stuff done, review the process. But the other
Mm,
piece that I often say to the people that I work with and myself is, what if I just enjoyed this?
mm,
Really powerful statement, and one that I've shared with so many of the people that I've worked with, because you can just suddenly lose track of what you would actually, in a scenario we actually normally enjoy it. You're like, "Oh, quick, I've got
mm,
to do this." If you stop and
mm,
go, "What if I actually enjoyed it?" There's sort of
mm,
this calmness that comes over despite how difficult that scenario may be, that helps
mm.
us reframe in terms of what we're doing.
And I couldn't agree more on this one because the moment you stop enjoying what you're doing, it becomes work.
Well, yeah. Right, and ideally, we're doing things that we love. Um,
Yeah.
I agree, but yeah, it becomes mundane, it becomes boring. No one wants to do
Yeah.
that. Boring stuff is like, do you want to get up and go, hey, would you like to do some really boring, repetitive stuff? Yeah, okay. I don't think so, right?
Nobody will do that boring. Okay, that this gave me thought to think now because being a founder, being an entrepreneur myself, it makes me feel burned some days. Some
Mm,
days I feel like, oh my god, I don't even have that much brain which I'm using right now.
yeah.
you know,
No, you
uh,
got full, and there's literally no room to do anything. I,
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I agree. I agree. Well, I
yeah.
mean, hopefully, as the world of work is becoming increasingly sympathetic and open and normalized in terms of how we balance our time and the support around people who think differently or need different tools to navigate their day.
Mm,
And I hope that it just continues in that way. I think it's still a lot of work to do, but we're also responsible for looking after how we see our day, and that's the power
yeah.
that we have, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's why the combination of your previous experience with health, as well as not just physical but also mental health, plus the scaling and the mentorship, that combines together becomes a package, and that's really good. And and I'm sure that like being a founder myself, we face a lot of paradigms or decision making fatigues, on
Yeah,
daily, right? And would you be able to share a moment when you were facing with a tough decision that had an immense impact on your business or someone else's business who came to you for help,
yeah.
and how did you navigate through it or help them navigate?
Well, one springs to mind, which I've shared not so long ago recently. I suppose there was a time my company was in the early stages, maybe 2 years old,
Mm,
and I had, I think maybe less than that. Regardless, anyway, I'd had some employees working with me, and we were working within this co-working chain, and um, which was great space in town actually, and
mhm,
was working away, and we had a number of clients. At the time, I believed that rather than having individual specialists, we had everyone on team who could do everything. At the time,
mm,
that was the model I think that we were looking to grow. And I was grafting. I was lone. I'm a lone parent. My son is now 18, bless him. But at the time, I was a lone parent, and in a much earlier stage of that,
mm,
young kid and rushing back home, etc. And it was really interesting. So a couple of years in, built the business on my own. Self funded, as in started from zero.
okay, so all bootstrap then from
Bootstrapped,
scratch.
grafted to get it up and running. And at the time, I was working hard, dashing back from the office, picking my son up, sometimes forgetting that, that sort of thing. And I
Mm,
remember there was this time where I was sitting in a client meeting, and they'd said, "Okay, so we've spoken to your team members." There's two particular team members at the time. And by the way, one of them showed me their website at the end of the meeting, and I
mm,
didn't really clock it. I was like, okay. Got home, was putting my son to bed, and this
mm,
wave came over me of, like something. I was like, that's not right. So I
yeah.
remember I popped onto my laptop and just
Mm,
did some looking, and up popped a duplicate of my business that one of
mm,
this team member had built out while working with me.
mm,
And it hit me like this wave of, I think, fear and shock. I remember putting my son to bed, but not really hearing or seeing anything that was going on. You're like, okay, blah, 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 put him in the bed. And I remember this feeling of, gosh, this is not ideal, particularly given
mm,
I was drafting myself on my own. And what transpired from that point was that the people, these particular two employees at the time, had thought it'd be a bit of a jolly to copy my business, and not only that, but run around using the memberships that I had to gain clients, and not only that, but also talking to my clients about that piece. So it all sort of hit me in this wave, and as this is, not an ideal issue, but we come across big issues all the time.
Yeah.
This was one that was particularly big for me.
Mhm.
And I remember at the time, so coping strategy number one was crack on.
Mhm.
Try not to make it, try not to let it impact other things, and making the decision around how do I fix this. So obviously that was downing tools, removing the issue,
Mm.
and damage limitation. So my piece there was just taking the actions needed on a day-to-day basis, regardless, even if I didn't feel like doing them. I have to do these three things to keep going. I have to smile and wave at this meeting because at the time
Mhm.
because at the
Sorry.
time, no problem at all. Because at the time I was still not letting them know I knew. So hat and
Mm.
cake, smile and wave. So there, there's a time when sometimes we need to do that, and it's tough, really tough, but you just got to crack on and
Yeah.
know that it will come. You'll get through the other side. And so ultimately, they were removed from the business, down tools, stopped for a while. And what I did do during that time, which I think is my second piece of advice here, is I limited the amount of decisions that I had to make during that time, and just
Mhm.
particularly around what I was gonna do with the business. I just focused on fixing and maintaining and
Mm.
consistently delivering that. And
Mm.
what I did do is I made no big I said, "I'm not gonna make a decision about what I'm gonna do with this business. I'm not gonna make any big decisions during this next period because it's gonna be half-mast. They're gonna be shit decisions. They're gonna be bad brain decisions, and I'm gonna be reactive based on the
Mm.
situation." So I spoke during that time. I spoke to legal people, I spoke to peers, I spoke to founders, other, everybody. I got advice on, what was going on. I looked up what was going on in the space. I wrote down all the things I wanted to improve with the business, things I thought were shit, things I thought were great, things I wanted to do more of, things I
Mm.
hated, all of these things. And I put them all, literally, it was 2 weeks after that I put everything on the table. I mean, it is actually, that's where the saying comes, put it on the table. And I put everything down, and I sat down, and I felt better. I remember that morning, I was like, yeah, I'm feeling better. I feel
Mm.
good. And so, taking that from not making decisions in a bad headspace to going, cool, I'm ready.
Mm.
I remember
Mm.
looking at all of this stuff, all the stuff that I collected, and that's when I rebuilt the business. I rebuilt it into a different business that was better, bigger. Uh,
Mm.
could never have done those. I would never have thought of some of these things without this scenario happening. Definitely wouldn't have. So,
Mm.
thank you. It was cool, and yeah. I hope there's been some takeaways from that. I think the main one
Yeah.
being, stay focused, make smart decisions. If it's not going to be a good one, take a minute. You don't have to say anything right now.
Yeah. So basically, what I received from this experience of yours is, first of all, great experience, because I've never heard it from any guest on the show that they face something that their own employees tried to steal their business model, or actually business and the clients, while working with you. It's in an ethical way. It's horrible.
Some people maybe don't know about it. There's no way it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, amazing experience. But
Mm,
also, you mentioned keep going, keep cracking, stop making decision, because then you will make a reactive decision. You have to
yeah,
focus on continuing the business and maintaining it. And then once you reach to that point, then you start scaling it, which you have done, and
yeah,
build a better business with better model. That's amazing. That's a really
yeah.
good advice, because most of the founders, if we hit something like this, we have hit a stone. I think the norm to go forward is to make some rash decisions, and then, because you get shaken up when something like this
You do,
comes
you
across.
really get shaken up, and it's very easy to do that, but I think you learn that I mean, it's the classic of, learning as a founder or as an individual not to
Mm.
fire off that email you just replied to in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
and that probably isn't the best one to send. You soon learn, you go, "I better hold it down for a little while." So I think
Mm.
it's just a bigger version of that, is it not?
Mhm. Mhm. Got it. Awesome. I'm enjoying this conversation so much, Sean, that I want to go and go, but we are limited with the time. So
No worries.
so yeah, so I always have this lightning round with my guest
Okay.
on the show with 6 questions. But before we go into that lightning round, I would like to ask you one last question, which is like, if you don't mind sharing could you reflect on your experiences and tell us about a mistake or a setback that you have encountered along the way that you now consider maybe not a regret, but a lessons learned for you? And then additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
Oh, it's interesting. I tend to have a very forward-focused mind, so don't necessarily keep a track of all the things that
Sure,
haven't
sure.
necessarily gone to plan, and tends to
Mhm.
take a very fast move on that. So, um, I would be less specific in my answer. My
Mhm.
answer would be more about the tactics that one should have to handle when things don't go right.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that is, I suppose, the repeated methodology I've had around when things haven't gone to plan,
Mm.
around assessing the situation, defining an action plan, and implementing those pieces smartly, um, and with courage and with pace, not with not at the right in the right way.
Mm.
So I suppose it's and just getting on with it and not looking back, right?
Sure, sure.
So I suppose when you with the sort of character that I am, I don't really have a full list of the things they're like that because I don't see them as that. It's just something that happens. It's a
Mhm.
thing that happens, and you get on with it and you move forward and deal with it. Given that I've dealt with some huge things in my life, I have a very high tolerance for what I consider a mistake or something not going right. So I
Mm.
probably wouldn't notice half the things that some may do. But
Mm.
my advice would be things happen all the time. It's just how you see it, and you can
Mm.
limit the impact of it as how long you ponder and wallow in that space versus
Exactly.
getting on with it, and moving forwards.
Awesome. Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Let's get into the lightning round. I've got
Yeah,
six
yeah,
quick fire
that's
questions
it.
for you.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Number one, what's one of the best pieces of business advice you have received?
I s I mean, I suppose less specifically one, I think it goes back to how I see things, and I mentioned that earlier, right?
Mm.
More learning along the way from everyone that I've seen pick up and do things in a great way and putting that in. So I suppose it's less one specific, more looking at others and picking that up. So I'm gonna have to fly through that question.
Sure, sure. No worries at all. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Um, I suppose there's two that spring to mind that are in line with my advice to others, so I'll bring that to the table. The first one, which I often give to my clients, is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And this very much talks about consistently doing the things you need to do on a daily basis and the compound effect of building that up, right? So
Mm.
you can take a really small action and be doing that consistently. The exponential growth of the impact of that is pretty cool. Same with
Mm.
training, right? Training every day, just a little bit, it builds up. Same as the opposite side of eating a little bit of chocolate. Don't notice that each day, but you will do.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, where did that come from? That belly. So,
Mm.
the compound effect is also in everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. What if you
Yeah.
did everything 5% better? 5%
Mm.
better, 5% more time on listening, 5% better email, 5% better eating habits. That
Mm.
exponential, but continuing to do that, the compound effect builds that up. And so you get a big impact of something that you didn't set out to do as a big thing. It just built up over time. Um,
Mm.
and I suppose the second one, which is a similar vein, this is sort of in stuff fascinates me, is what is it? It's The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, which is the same thing. It's about doing things in a really great way and
Mm.
maintaining that. I think those are the ones I'd recommend.
Okay, that sounds good. And what's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Someone who just consistently gets
Come.
stuff done, takes action, makes things
Yeah,
happen, moves
yeah,
forward. Someone,
yeah.
we don't always have the answers, and I often do leadership coaching, etc. And part of that is, you don't always have to know what you're going to do next, but stand tall, take the action, take it on the chin, and inspire others to follow you,
Mm.
and keep moving forward. And yeah, you've hit it there.
Awesome, awesome. What's your personal favorite productivity tool or habit?
My diary. is my well, because my diary is the tool within which, right?
Yeah, yeah.
My habit is keeping that up to date with the different things I need to do, working live. So I think working live is probably the feeder to that. So I'm going to go with that, which is keep doing the things you need to do at the time.
Mm,
Do that meeting, got to get those notes in, whack them in the folder, send that email, brush onto the next thing.
mm.
Working live and keeping my diary up to date. Diary is the best tool. I literally would pass out if my there's been several times my diary's not there. I'm like, I actually not sure. I actually don't know what I'm doing. Because what you want
Yeah,
to do by doing that is create the space in your head to be able to think sharp off
yeah,
the top of your what's it.
yeah.
But at the same vein, if my diary disappeared, I think I may have a few issues. So diary very heavily reliant upon.
Perfect, perfect. And what's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had the time?
Well, I don't think I'd be short of crazy business ideas since I think in quite a different way. But I
Hmm.
also am not, I would be pretty foolhardy to share any cool ideas I have on the platform.
That's all right. That's
So I'm
perfect.
going to pass on that too.
Okay, no worries. Last but not least, what's an interesting or a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Um, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's well, let's go with when I was in the fitness industry, I used to teach aerobics and step and Taebo. So I suppose an interesting one would be I used to teach really, really high tempo techno aerobic classes in the city.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, jumping around, shouting and screaming to a room full of people. They were packed. There was a massive waiting list all the time. It used to be completely crazy, crazy music, and me shouting and running around. So I don't think many people will know that. So there we go.
There you go. Perfect. Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your stories, unpacking the last years of building this business and some of the ups and downs along the way. If people want to reach out to you, how do they do that? What's the website, or how do they reach out to you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, sure. I suppose the easiest way is my website is seanwinfield.com, and there are various handles on that. So you could probably connect through LinkedIn and Insta. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so probably good shout to follow me there. And yeah, that's how you can get hold of me.
Awesome. I'll be sharing your LinkedIn in this episode's description anyway, so that would be
Good
great.
plan.
Great, Sean. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and impactful work you're doing through your business and coaching. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Founders Podcast.
Yeah, cool speaking, Ash. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Sean insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on our future interviews. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.